When Gareth Southgate arrived at Euro 2024, his midfield blueprint looked genuinely thoughtful on the surface. Declan Rice anchoring defensively, Trent Alexander-Arnold providing the deep passing range, and Jude Bellingham operating in that dangerous half space between the lines where he consistently causes the most damage. Three distinct profiles, three different types of quality, supposedly combining into a platform that could carry England through a major tournament. The plan had a certain logic to it. The coaching staff had clearly considered what each individual contributes and how those contributions might interact productively. Three different skill sets supposedly building something more coherent than any of them could produce independently. But football does not get played on paper. The problem announced itself even in the opening win against Serbia. A victory that felt uncomfortable in ways that victories are not supposed to feel. The midfield had names that commanded respect. The midfield had reputations that generated genuine expectation. What it conspicuously lacked was the ability to control a match. England were getting results without producing any evidence that they had genuinely solved something, winning without convincing, progressing without the feeling that anything had actually been established. Against Denmark, Southgate ran the same arrangement again. Before the hour mark, Trent was being replaced by Conor Gallagher, the kind of substitution that communicates volumes about how the plan was functioning without a single word needing to be spoken. Against Slovenia in the third group game, the departure went even further. Gallagher started alongside Rice. Trent was removed from the midfield entirely. Something resembling an answer appeared to have been located. It had not. At halftime against Slovenia, Gallagher came off and Kobbie Mainoo came on. And what followed was one of those moments that arrives without announcement, without obvious drama, almost as an afterthought to other decisions that seemed more significant at the time. But that quietly changed the entire direction of everything that came after. No spectacular goal followed. No tackle that immediately generated viral attention. No individual moment that highlight packages would replay for days. What happened was simultaneously simpler and more significant than any of those things. England looked calmer. England looked like a team that understood where the ball was going before it arrived there. Mainoo received under pressure and made nothing of the pressure. He simply kept things moving with a rhythm and a steadiness that his teammates immediately responded to. He gave Rice the genuine midfield partner that the holding role had been demanding, someone who could accept the ball, turn in tight spaces, connect phases, and make the midfield breathe again instead of constantly gasping for air in moments of opposition pressure. After 3 games of searching through different combinations and finding that none of them fully resolved the problem, Southgate had stumbled onto something that actually worked. By the round of 16 against Slovakia, Mainoo was starting, and that specific detail, the way he earned his place not through pre-tournament reputation or committee selection, but by visibly and concretely solving a problem that no other available player had managed to solve, is the most revealing thing about who Kobbie Mainoo actually is and why his story keeps being worth paying attention to. He did not arrive at the tournament as the pre-packaged answer. England had to experience the problem before they could recognize what the solution looked like. They had to reach the specific, uncomfortable point where the original plan had clearly stopped being viable. And only after that did the door open for a player whose particular qualities were precisely matched to the exact gap that needed filling. This tells you something important about Mainoo. As a footballer, he does not require being the first answer written on the team sheet. He only needs to be the correct answer when the moment of genuine need arrives. Now, with the World Cup approaching and England operating under Thomas Tuchel, the situation has an uncomfortably familiar feel to anyone who watched what unfolded at the Euros. Some of the names surrounding the conversation have shifted. Elliot Anderson has pushed himself into genuine contention in ways that Gallagher never managed to sustain. Tuchel has specific and developed ideas about shape, midfield balance, and the kind of structural security that allows attacking talent to express itself without constant exposure at the other end. The opening plan may not feature Mainoo as the first name confirmed, but this situation has been seen before, and the ending is already on record. Before any of the international football conversation though, before the Euros, before the national team complications and opportunities, before anything that major tournament football brings, there's a club story that explains everything about how Mainoo handles pressure, uncertainty, and the specific challenge of proving himself in environments that are not designed to accommodate him easily. The footballer you become at senior level is shaped by the path that produced you. and the path that produced Kobbie Mainoo is worth understanding properly. Born in Stockport through local football first, then into the Manchester United Academy, but not as a player who arrived accompanied by outsized expectations and significant external noise. Mainoo came through the traditional United development pathway quietly and steadily, with the kind of patient, unhurried progression that the academy system claims to provide, but delivers far less frequently than anyone within it would prefer to acknowledge. In the current climate of external pressure on young players to reach senior readiness ahead of the schedule the game actually requires, what separated him from other talented young players coming through the system was not flashiness, it was not pace or physical dominance or the kinds of spectacular individual moments that get captured on social media and generate excitement from people who follow development football without necessarily understanding what genuine senior readiness looks like. It was something considerably rarer and considerably more difficult to develop through coaching. He looked calm long before calmness was supposed to be available to him. He played passes that gave teammates options rather than passes that showcased his own ability. He received the ball in tight and pressured situations without the rushed first touch that gives away possession and communicates panic, the default response of most young players when the game arrives at them faster than expected. He moved around the pitch with a spatial awareness and an understanding of rhythm and tempo that most players only develop after years of senior exposure to the game at levels that reward intelligence consistently. That quality is genuinely uncommon in young players, and the people inside United's academy identified it immediately as something worth nurturing differently. In the FA Youth Cup winning run, one of the clearest signals in years that a meaningful generation was developing at Old Trafford, Mainoo was not simply a squad member benefiting from the collective achievement. He was one of the players giving the group its balance and its composure, helping the team function with intelligence rather than just energy. Eric 10. Hag noticed what was available. Mainoo began training with the first team. He appeared on benches and then at 17 years old was handed his senior debut against Charlton in the Carabao Cup. For most young players, that specific moment carries enormous psychological weight. The transition from academy football into genuine senior professional football is a real step, and many talented players with genuine ability never successfully complete the psychological dimension of that transition, regardless of how much technical quality they possess. Mainoo's reaction told you precisely who he was. He did not walk onto that pitch looking like a player desperately trying to demonstrate his right to be there. He walked onto it looking like someone who had already resolved that question internally and was simply going to play football the way he always played it. Same calmness, same intelligence, same refusal to let the scale of the occasion alter the quality of his decision-making. That specific quality is what generated such rapid and genuine attachment from United supporters. They were not simply watching an academy product collecting valuable cup minutes, they were watching a midfielder who appeared to carry something United's center of the pitch had been conspicuously missing across an extended and frustrating period. The composure to hold the ball under pressure, the intelligence to make good decisions without the panic that had become almost a defining characteristic of United's midfield in difficult matches. Then came the summer of 2023 and preseason inclusion against genuinely serious opposition, Arsenal, Real Madrid. Ten Hag was testing Mainoo in those environments, or more accurately using them to confirm publicly what had already been established internally. The player was ready, but then the injury against Real Madrid interrupted everything at the exact moment when everything had been pointing toward a breakthrough. The first team place had seemed within reach, and then it retreated. What appeared to be the beginning of something became a delay. Instead, United supporters had seen enough to believe in what was coming. But the wider football world still required actual evidence rather than promising signs. That difference between promise and proof matters enormously in professional football. Promise generates excitement among people already paying attention. Proof changes the permanent conversation. Kobbie Mainoo's proof arrived at Goodison Park. Manchester United traveled to Everton in November 2023 for something that was far from a routine away match. Everton had just absorbed a 10-point deduction that had transformed the atmosphere inside the stadium into something genuinely hostile. A crowd processing collective outrage and channeling every element of it toward opposition players who provided a convenient available target. For a seasoned midfielder with years of exposure to difficult professional atmospheres, that kind of game already presents significant challenges. For an 18-year-old starting in the Premier League for the first time, it could have been completely destabilizing. Mainoo gave no indication of finding it destabilizing. The match is remembered primarily for Alejandro Garnacho's extraordinary bicycle kick, one of those goals so visually spectacular that it dominates every narrative about the game before it has even finished. But while attention was entirely focused on that moment, something equally important and arguably more significant for the long-term story of Manchester United was occurring behind it. Mainoo was managing the game. He was operating in front of the defense, consistently presenting himself as an available option when United faced pressure, accepting the ball in positions that most young players instinctively avoid because losing it there creates immediate danger rather than simple inconvenience. He was not manufacturing impressive moments for the highlights. He was not announcing every touch with some kind of demonstrative quality designed to attract the camera's attention. The disciplined intelligence of understanding what a midfielder actually contributes to winning football matches, rather than what a midfielder does to build an individual reputation, was precisely what distinguished him from every other story that stadium contained that afternoon. Then came the moment that most precisely crystallized everything. Everton created a real opportunity to threaten United's lead. Dwight McNeil's effort was moving toward goal, and Mainoo was on the line to clear it with the kind of positioning and defensive awareness that goes well beyond technical quality and reflects genuine understanding of the game's geometry and danger. That clearance said something specific and important. It demonstrated the capacity to recognize danger before it reaches its worst expression and take personal responsibility for preventing it, an intelligence that sophisticated football observers value highly and find relatively rarely. The assessments that followed said everything necessary. Gary Neville observed that Mainoo had looked more composed than any other player on the pitch, a serious statement from someone whose observations about midfield play carry genuine weight. Roy Keane, who treats praise as a finite resource and distributes it with genuine reluctance that makes its appearance meaningful, arrived at precisely the same conclusion. These were not polite gestures toward a young player having an adequate debut. These were serious assessments from people who have spent careers understanding what the position requires, and they were recognizing something genuinely different from what United's midfield had been producing. Before Everton, Mainoo was the academy player that United's most attentive supporters had convinced themselves to believe in. After Everton, belief transformed into something more concrete and more durable. The composure was not a young player's best academy performance bleeding temporarily into a professional environment before the pressure exposed it as insufficient. It was the real thing. It had survived a hostile Premier League ground. It had survived the atmosphere and the weight of a match where the crowd was explicitly trying to make the opposition uncomfortable. And from that moment, the nature of the conversation changed completely. This was no longer about potential and trajectory and promising signs. This was about present tense reality and what was actually available right now. United supporters felt they had found the midfielder they had been missing for years. And soon enough, England would begin asking exactly the same question: what Mainoo provided Southgate through the Euros, and what he has the opportunity to provide Tuchel through a World Cup, is the kind of quality that resists capture by statistics and highlight packages while remaining immediately visible to anyone who watches the game with genuine understanding. He provides the team with the capacity to use the ball under pressure without generating panic. He provides the holding midfielder alongside him, Rice in England's context, with a genuine partner who can receive in difficult situations and recirculate play intelligently, which frees Rice to be more aggressive and more physically assertive in his own role. He provides tempo regulation, the ability to slow matches that are moving at a dangerous pace and accelerate them when space becomes available to exploit. Written down, that sounds straightforward. In practice, under genuine tournament pressure with an entire country watching and everything meaningful at stake, finding a player who can do all of those things with consistency is extremely rare. At the Euros, Mainoo demonstrated he belongs in that rare category, in a quarterfinal against Switzerland, in a semifinal against the Netherlands, and then in the final itself against Spain. The same player who had begun the tournament waiting patiently for his opportunity was starting the largest game England could play. That progression from available option to first choice across the course of a single tournament does not happen through fortune or favorable circumstance alone. It happens because the player keeps demonstrating every time an opening presents itself that he has earned the right to remain in that environment. The World Cup presents the familiar challenge in a new context. Tuchel has specific ideas and specific preferences. Anderson has established himself as someone the new manager specifically values. Rice remains the central figure. Bellingham reshapes whatever midfield he joins simply through the quality and the competitive nature of what he brings. The opening plan may look different from what Mainoo would write for himself, but here is what tournament football consistently demonstrates to anyone paying attention across multiple editions. The plan that appears correct before the first match is almost never the plan that wins the tournament. Something gets exposed. Something fails to function the way the coaching staff expected against real opposition, applying genuine tactical intelligence to stopping you. A specific problem emerges that the original design was not constructed to address, and when England encounter that problem, when the midfield loses the shape or the rhythm or the capacity to control the moments that actually determine outcomes, the question of who provides the solution will be asked again. It was asked at the Euros, it will be asked at the World Cup, and Kobbie Mainoo's entire career story, from Stockport, through the academy, through Goodison Park, through the tournament that was supposed to belong to different names but ended up belonging significantly to him, is the answer to what happens when England reach that moment and look clearly at what is available. He does not need to be the first answer. He needs to be the correct answer when the moment of genuine need arrives and the problem is clear. He has already demonstrated exactly that.